While everyone fears the jump out of the bushes type of attack, this sort of ambush accounts for less than 10% of all criminal assaults. If you are expecting only this type of attack, you will not see the actual danger signals which precede the other 90% of attacks. The real warning signals of impending muggings, assaults, or rapes aren't the same as most people imagine. Television and the movies have promoted serious misconceptions in this area. Experienced criminals don't display this sort of dramatized behavior. Once you know what to watch for, the true signals are just as obvious as Hollywood's versions. This video will teach you the danger signals that criminals broadcast and how to use this knowledge to avoid becoming a victim. Contrary to popular myth, most criminals talk with the victim before the actual attack. The criminal will interview a target for his or her victim potential. Your safety relies upon recognizing this pattern early enough to prevent it from developing. By learning what a criminal needs to be successful and then making sure he doesn't get it, you can prevent him from attacking in the first place. This video is not designed to teach you how to fight. Most people have neither the desire to fight nor the inclination to learn. In fact, by the time a crime reaches the attack stage, it is usually too late to effectively defend yourself. Even a trained martial artist would lose in this situation. Realistically speaking, nearly 80% of all crimes are committed with a weapon. Despite the claim of many martial arts schools, fighting barehanded against an armed opponent is suicide. Your safety resides in knowing the early danger signals which will occur before the criminal attacks. Armed with this knowledge, you can avoid putting yourself into positions where it is both safe and easy for the criminal to attack you. An aware and alert victim will be bypassed in favor of someone who doesn't know the real danger signals of a developing crime. Most people believe the way to solve the crime problem in cities is by increasing the number of police. Unfortunately, this is not true. Understand that by law, policemen aren't bodyguards. They cannot protect you. The police can make an arrest after a crime, but until a crime has been committed, they can't prevent a criminal from going where he will. Policemen are not allowed to violate a criminal's civil rights, regardless of how obvious it is that the criminal is up to no good. The criminal knows how to avoid being caught. If he takes a few precautions in deciding when and where to attack, there is little chance of him actually being caught in the act. It's as simple as attacking someone in an out-of-the-way place, or waiting until the police car turns the corner before committing a crime. In 1 year, there were 11 million reported crimes, compared to 3 million arrests for those crimes. It has been estimated that the average serial rapist has committed 7 prior rapes before he is finally caught. With odds like that, the criminal has no fear of being arrested. It is your personal responsibility to avoid being chosen to be the victim of a crime. The police will not be around when the criminal decides to attack. Even if the police do catch him, the odds are still with the criminal. The biggest reason the police can't protect you is because of what happens after the arrest. The legal system is designed to favor the criminal's rights over those of the victim. An officer can arrest a criminal, and the legal system will have him back out on the street the same night. It's expensive to prosecute and jail a criminal. At best, most DA offices have only about a 70% conviction rate on all cases that go to trial. The sad truth is that most criminal cases never see the inside of a courtroom. A majority of these cases are resolved by plea bargaining. The criminal's attorney and the DA get together and negotiate a lesser charge that the criminal will plead guilty to instead. This way, both lawyers get what they want. It clears the matter for the DA's office, and the criminal gets off the hook with a lesser charge. The penalty for many plea bargains is either a fine or the time the criminal has already spent in jail. In either case, the criminal walks the street free. The reason adding more police won't deter the number of crimes is because the criminals are being released back onto the streets as fast as the police are catching them. Even in cases which result in convictions and prison sentences, the criminal has little to worry about. Our prison system is so overcrowded that there is not enough room to keep them all in prison. A convicted criminal stands very little chance of seeing the inside of a prison. If he does, it will be only for a short period of time. It is not unusual for a murderer to spend only 2 to 3 years in prison for his crime. To a habitual criminal, going to jail is like being sent to his room. Unlike you, a stint in prison won't destroy his life. In fact, many criminals look at prison as a chance to get free medical and dental work done. He knows that unless his crime was particularly heinous, he won't be there very long. A minor crime like burglary or car theft will result in a light sentence, of which he'll actually serve just a few weeks or months. That isn't a deterrent, it's an inconvenience.
If you're expecting prison or the police to act as a deterrent for the criminal, don't. He's not afraid of it. The great deterrent isn't. As a matter of fact, the criminal knows the court system better than you do. The only thing that a criminal is afraid of, though, is getting hurt. Immediate pain is something he's afraid of. And because of this, his safety relies on choosing the right victim.
Don't make the mistake of believing that the criminal is omnipotent. Nothing could be further from the truth. In order to understand his true nature and mentality, we can look at a model of the food chain. In the middle of the food chain are those who are both predators and prey. At the same time they are attacking those lower on the chain than themselves, they are being hunted by predators higher up on the chain. These are called middle-line predators, and they have to be careful who they attack. Anyone even close to their own size is not safe for them to attack. The sort of criminal that you will encounter on the street is equivalent to the middle-line predator. He has to be careful not to attack the wrong person. He must make sure that his victim is safe to attack before he commits himself to a course of action. A wrong choice could be fatal for the criminal. This need of the criminal makes him predictable, and that's what you can use against him. Before he decides to attack, he's going to be testing to make sure that you're safe to attack. If he doesn't like the answer he gets, he will not commit himself to an attack. It's by focusing your attention on this process that you will prevent a criminal from choosing you as his victim. The first thing you should do is change your perception of the objective of an attack. Criminal attacks can best be viewed as a removal of options. In cases of coercion, such as robbery or rape, the victim is left with only the options of complying or being hurt. By removing your options, the criminal becomes successful in his intended crime. Furthermore, he remains safe because he is in control of the situation. The criminal has to get you into a position where you have no option but to concede to his wishes. That is his goal. Understand, despite what martial arts schools promote as self-defense, this is not going to be a fight. The criminal doesn't want to fight. He wants to get his way and be done with it. He realizes that if he were to engage in a fight, he could get hurt. Being injured will lower his position on the food chain and leave him vulnerable to the predations of his own kind. Even if the criminal physically assaults you, he is not interested in standing there and exchanging blows. He will attempt to position himself so that he can safely attack and gain immediate victory with little personal risk. A criminal will first make sure you are safe to attack. Then they will position themselves to control your options. Awareness of these two factors alone makes potential criminal activity easy to spot and thereby easy to avoid. There are 5 basic stages to all criminal violence and violent crimes. These stages are intent, interview, positioning, attack, and reaction. No matter what the circumstances or details of a developing situation, these are the fundamental patterns that the crime will follow. You will notice that the actual attack is step number 4. The first 3 stages are steps taken to ensure the criminal can get away with it. Once these 3 points are met, the attack will occur. However, if he can't fulfill the first 3 requirements, the attack won't happen.
The object of the exercise isn't to fight the guy. As a matter of fact, by the time he gets to the actual attack, it's over. He's already figured out a way to win, he knows that he can do it, and he's going to get you. The object of the exercise is to keep it from getting to the point of an attack. Here's the attack. He's trying to take the situation and manipulate it to this point. You, on the other hand, are trying to manipulate the situation away from that point. Your safety relies on making sure it never gets to this point.
During a confrontation, both the criminal and his intended victim have certain tools at their disposal. The effective use of these tools will decide which party will prevail in the end. The criminal's tools include surprise, fear, a personal willingness to commit physical violence, knowledge of what it takes to be successful, the ability to decide whether or not to attack, the public's lack of awareness of the true meaning of his action, and the victim's disbelief that it's actually happening to him. To even out the playing field, you need to have the following tools: self-worth, awareness, intelligence, knowledge of the strategies he uses, willingness to commit physical violence in self-defense, people and crowds, plus anything else you may have up your sleeves. Realistically, you are on equal footing with the criminal. In order to avoid being chosen as a criminal's victim, you don't have to be tougher or meaner than he is. You need only seem big enough so that it's not 100% safe for him to attack you. A code system can be utilized to prepare to quickly respond to situations as they develop. These simple codes are reminders of how you should react at each stage. Code 1 means pay attention. Something is occurring which could become a problem. Code 2 means a problem exists. The attack hasn't occurred, but the threat is real. Everything else becomes secondary until the situation is resolved. If you have a self-defense item, now is the time to get it ready. Code 3 means the attack is happening, and it's time for desperate measures. As you see the stages develop, assign them codes to help you recognize your position and what action you should take. Form a mindset about what you must do in each case to remain safe. Failing an interview and self-defense both depend mostly on your mindset. The first of the 5 stages is intent. This is when the criminal crosses a normal mental boundary and becomes a predator. This change is reflected by many subtle body signals. Unless you are trained to spot them, they may merely register on your subconscious mind. You may be aware of these signals, but have no idea what they mean. This awareness comes from beyond the rational mind, and we all have it. Haven't you ever met a person that you immediately disliked without knowing why? Ask yourself of whom that person reminded you. Your subconscious recognized nonverbal signal patterns, which were similar to those of someone else who'd done wrong or caused you pain. Your subconscious recognizes predators. All you have to do is listen to it. Most people are victimized because, although they sense the criminal's intent, they see no obvious sign to base a reaction upon. So they continue to either walk right into it or to allow the criminal to proceed to the attack stage. There is a distinct difference between someone who is simply tough and someone who is a predator on the hunt. The person who is hunting emits a sense of hunger or feeling of aggression. The best way to learn the difference is by going to a local mall. By watching different tough guys, you can quickly learn to recognize when someone is hunting. Recognizing intent is an important issue because it is the driving force behind an attack. Without intent, no attack will occur. Most encounters will indeed be harmless. If you are unsure, watch to see if he tries to direct the encounter towards the next two stages. Whenever you see someone with intent, even if they are at a distance, it is a Code 1 situation. Stay aware of him and where he is. As long as he stays over there, it's fine. But if he starts heading towards you, it could be the beginning of a problem. If someone with intent is close to you and coming closer, you have a definite problem. The situation has become a Code 2. Nothing hostile has happened, but you should immediately go to full alert. In this sort of situation, you must be prepared for the likelihood of violence. The next stage is the interview. This is how the criminal double checks to see if the person he is considering attacking is a safe victim. He's testing boundaries, awareness, a willingness to act physically, and a person's victim potential. He wants to know two things. Do you know what he's up to? And are you safe to attack? Most interviews involve a person approaching you on a seemingly harmless subject. Usually he'll ask for something like matches, the time, or directions. Make no mistake, when intent is present, this is an interview, not a request. This is one interview you want to fail. If you pass, he will attack. There are 5 types of interviews: regular, silent, escalating, hot, and prolonged. The regular interview has already been mentioned. It consists of someone with intent approaching and talking while getting into attack position. The approach used varies from case to case, but it is often a request for something. The criminal is testing to see if you are willing to give. Once that precedent is established, it becomes a matter of how much he can take. Since most interviews are based upon asking for something, your answer should always be no. Although you may have the item or information you are asked for, lie about it.
Let go. Let go. Keep looking. Keep looking.
All requests should be met with refusal. The next type of interview is a silent interview. In this type of interview, the criminal stays back and watches body language to decide if a person is safe to attack. In an experiment, videotapes of pedestrians were shown to convicts in prison. They were then asked who they choose as likely victims. There was a 95% consensus rate among them as to who would make a good victim. The study indicates criminals are adept at reading body language and are surprisingly uniform in their choice of victims. Contrary to public perception, victims are not chosen entirely at random. The main thing the criminal is checking is the degree of your awareness of him. A person who isn't aware of a lurking criminal is easy prey. Most surprise attackers don't hide. A real hiding place takes too long to emerge from and makes too much noise. This could work against the criminal. More often than not, a criminal is in plain view, but standing somewhere you don't normally look. This allows him to see you so that he can decide whether to attack or not. Furthermore, he can strike without losing the time it would take to come out of a real hiding place. By standing in the open, he can quickly and quietly cross the distance between you. The most common form of surprise attack is done by following the victim to his or her car. The criminal has been in plain view all along, yet the victim never once looked around. Most robberies occur on the way to or from the victim's car.
Get in. Get in.
Be aware that in a crisis, your car can become a trap instead of a safety zone. Don't go to your car if you see someone with intent who is close enough to reach you before you can get in, get your car started, back out, and drive away. Time yourself one day to see how long it takes you to get into your car in an emergency. The most common mistake people make is attempting to reach the imagined safety zone of their car instead of heading back towards real safety. Even if you do manage to get inside your car, the window can still be smashed or shot out. Always look to see who is in the area before you devote your attention to anything else. This includes ATMs, telephones, and your car, or anything else which will distract you. If someone of questionable intent is nearby, don't ignore him. Postpone whatever you were planning to do until he is gone. If he tries to approach you, leave the area. Whenever you pass someone you distrust, check over your shoulder after you've progressed about 15 feet. Don't do this in a frightened or hesitant manner. Project an attitude which conveys that you are alert. Once he knows that you're aware of the possibility that he might follow you, it lessens the likelihood that he'll do so. Another type of interview is the escalating interview. The scene starts out calm, but then quickly becomes unmanageable. This type of interview is common preceding rape. In this scenario, the man becomes more unreasonable and demanding until he attacks. The escalating interview is also associated with pack or group behavior. The situation starts out calmly, but rapidly becomes dangerous. Beware of any situation where someone's logic takes a sudden left turn and is accompanied by intent. The fourth type of interview is called the hot interview. This is more commonly used with male victims. It is rooted in the "what are you looking at" conflicts from high school. In many ways, this is simple bullying. The interviewer is trying to see if he can get away with pushing you around by surprising you with his attitude. The hot interview is best handled by responding with the same energy that's being put out. Be forewarned, this is a 50-50 proposition. Either it will work, or it will immediately escalate into violence. Be especially careful about responding to insults yelled from passing cars. A carload of toughs often will set out with the intention of beating or shooting someone for the night's entertainment. Any response from you can result in your being tonight's chosen victim. The last type of interview is the prolonged interview. Over a period of time, the criminal observes his victim to learn the victim's patterns and schedule. Once he knows this, the criminal decides when and where to attack. Always note who is watching you. Someone who pays too much attention to you is a serious danger sign when it is combined with intent. In each type of interview, the criminal is looking for key points which will tell him you are safe to attack. These points are: 1. A lack of awareness. The victim does not see him at all or is unaware of what he is up to. This allows the criminal to get into attack position. 2. Excessive fear. The person reacts with fear despite the fact that no overt threat is present. Someone who is visibly scared by the criminal's mere presence is an easy target. This can often provoke an attack, even if the criminal wasn't initially planning to do anything. 3. Verbal aggression without the willingness to take it to a physical level. This is especially applicable to women. Without the willingness to back it up physically, he's got the violence, and all you have is bluster. 4. Macho posturing. This is often used as a cover for fear. Unfortunately, it reveals more than it hides. There is an obvious difference between bravado and calm preparedness. If you're not a macho man, don't try to bluff it. 5. Low self-esteem or lack of boundaries. A person with low self-esteem will allow someone to violate his or her boundaries without repercussions. The criminal wants to know if your self-esteem and self-worth is stronger than your desire not to use violence. If not, you will become his victim. A person who is willing to do whatever it takes to defend himself and his boundaries will almost always be passed over by a criminal in favor of a safer victim. A person's body language can convey to the criminal that he will not be an easy or safe victim. Once you have identified someone with intent, if that person begins to approach you, go to Code 2 status. If he tries to open communications with you, you've entered the second stage, the interview. Accept that this is a real situation, not your imagination. You should ready your defenses at this time. This includes your sprays, guns, or any other self-defense item. It's not yet time to swing or shoot, but stay alert for him trying to move to the next stage, which is positioning himself for attack. If he attempts to achieve the third stage, remove any doubts you may have as to the situation being innocent. The odds are astronomically against these three stages occurring coincidentally. He hasn't committed himself to attack yet, which legally limits your options, but he is up to something. It could be rape, robbery, or assault. They all pass through these same basic stages. You don't need to be able to identify the species to recognize a shark attack. You must realize that you're in a potentially dangerous situation, and it could turn violent before most people could react. That is why it is a Code 2 situation. Now is when your self-worth is being tested. Are you willing to resort to violence to defend yourself if he decides to attack? Now is the time you need to know, not later. The instant you go to Code 2, you must be ready, willing, and able if it turns physical. If he sees this, most of the time he'll veer off immediately and go looking for a safer victim.
The interview is not a time to be terrified. Yes, I admit that it's scary, but if you panic, you're in trouble. You will be attacked if you panic at this moment. Legally speaking, nothing's happened yet. He can say, hey, I'm innocent, and until he pulls that gun, he is, by legal standards, innocent. It's scary, but you got to stay calm during this interview. Now that you know the process, it'll be easier to stay calm.
When the criminal gets into the physical place from which he intends to launch his attack, it's called positioning. He has placed himself into the spot which he has predetermined will give him the best angle of attack, or he is moving into that position. Usually, the actual positioning takes place during the interview. While he is talking to you, he is moving into attack position. If the criminal has fulfilled the other steps, once he gets into position, he will attack. Pay close attention to what he is doing while he's talking. Before he can attack, he has to come close. He cannot effectively limit your options from beyond 10 feet. A long distance between you removes his surprise and gives you a chance to react. If you work in an office or live in a city, you are constantly being crowded. People accept their personal space being violated as just another fact of life. However, in order to avoid or survive a crime, it is critical that you change your attitude about this. There are 4 basic types of positioning: closing, cornering, surrounding, and surprise. While a particular move may have aspects of another category, most moves clearly fall into one of these 4 categories. The most common type of positioning is simply getting close to the victim. During the interview, the criminal moves close to the person. Once the distance is closed, the attack occurs. Closing frequently happens from behind. This is especially true in parking lots and at ATMs. Always check to see who is behind you or in your vicinity before you commit your attention to anything else. Anytime a person approaches you in a questionable situation, don't let him get any closer than 5 feet. There is no legitimate reason why a total stranger needs to come any closer than that. He doesn't need to come close to ask a question. There exist strict protocols about distance on the street. Street people do not crowd each other unless they are intent on conflict. Predators know not to invade another predator's territory. This is not a question of etiquette. The criminal does know better than to invade another person's space. Where he comes from, people die over the issue. Once you have set a boundary, the criminal is faced with either committing himself to attack or backing off. If he commits himself to an attack, you are justified in defending yourself within the limits of the law. Often, when you set a boundary, the criminal will attempt to weasel past it. He may ask something like, "Why are you being so unfriendly?" Do not fall for this ploy. While he is verbally distracting you, he is advancing towards you. Whatever his excuse, don't allow him to advance.
The term, "give me 5 feet," has got special significance to a criminal. Anybody who has ever been on the wrong side of the cage knows that term, and it will bring them up short. What it is, it's a term that prison guards use to get the criminal back, and the criminal knows that if he doesn't back off immediately, he will be maced or clubbed right then, right there, no questions asked. This is a term that if you're going to use, you better be committed, you better be willing to take it to the ground right then and there, because this is not a false front bluster move. This is something you got to be committed to. The other thing about this term is that it will confuse the criminal. It's a term that he's going to wonder, how did you as a civilian know this term? Because only people who can hurt him know it.
The second type of positioning is cornering. By blocking the exit with his body, a criminal prevents the victim from escaping. Anytime you see someone with intent, look around to see if you are in a position where you could be easily trapped. Large surfaces, such as walls or cars, can be used to corner a person. All the criminal must do is position himself where the victim can't escape before the criminal closes the distance. Whenever you see someone of questionable intent, check your position to see if you could become penned. Make a note of where he would have to be in order to pin you. If you see him move towards that exact spot, you are in danger. Move quickly before he reaches you or the spot that will let him pin you. Always be aware of someone blocking the exits. In many situations, your only escape is through him. If possible, head for another exit. If he changes his course to meet you, he's tipped his hand. There is no good reason for him to change his course to match yours. The next type of positioning is surrounding. Put simply, a horseshoe is a death trap. Fortunately, it is rather obvious when one is developing. A common technique used by groups is for one member to verbally distract you as the others move into attack position. If you see this situation developing, call a halt to it immediately. Anytime you face a group, draw an imaginary line between you and them. Anyone who attempts to cross it is immediately told to stop. If they continue, they've announced their intention. 27% of all robberies are committed by strong-arm tactics. This usually means a pack of toughs. In many cases, they were not hunting, but hanging out when a victim stumbled into their midst. If you see a group of young males bunched up, socializing in an area such as a deserted parking lot, do not approach them. Such an action is literally walking into the lion's jaws. Sometimes a group is out hunting. Beware a group spaced out along a wall you must pass. In this situation, it is a simple trick to attack anyone foolish enough to walk into the trap. If you see a situation such as this, cross the street and leave the area. You can be surrounded by as few as 2 criminals. Many robberies are committed by pairs. The most common technique is the pincer move. In this instance, one will approach the victim from either side. The most dangerous signal is when you notice 2 characters who are together suddenly split up upon entering an area. This may be an immediate threat or danger building. For the latter case, watch for people who are together but suddenly split up and begin to ignore each other. Another form of splitting is when one member hangs back by the door while another enters the room. This is an extremely dangerous situation. You should immediately head towards the one near the door. Understand, you will have to go through him to escape. If you have just passed a person of questionable intent, and a few feet later a second person steps out, immediately check behind you. If the first person is following you, take immediate evasive maneuvers to get both parties on one side of you. The last type of positioning is surprise. This type of positioning often follows the silent interview. Most surprise positioning can be avoided by simply looking around when you enter a lonely area. Make sure you are well aware of your surroundings before you direct your attention to something that would allow a criminal to approach you unnoticed. Should you spot someone who makes you feel uncomfortable, return to where you came from or elude him. If he follows, he has tipped his hand and lost the element of surprise. Anytime you are avoiding someone like this, move towards the light and the noise. Seldom is escape impossible. If all else fails, you can usually run. If that is not practical, turn and face your opponent to avoid being hit from behind. This will change the interview from silent to regular and remove his advantage of surprise. The most important aspect of surprise positioning involves the armed attacker. If he manages to draw and deploy a weapon from closer than 10 feet, he has won. Your safety depends upon recognizing when someone is reaching for a weapon and then immediately running away. Even from a starting distance of 5 feet, your immediate action can increase the distance many times before he gets his weapon out and deployed. A quick reaction on your part can greatly lessen your chances of being hurt in this situation. Whenever you're being approached by anyone of questionable intent, make sure his hands are in plain sight. If he slips his hands into his pockets, you don't know what he will bring out. Never allow someone with his hands in his pockets to approach closer than 10 feet. Immediately, tell that person to slowly bring his hands from his pockets. If he makes a sudden move, run. Another danger signal is clawing for a gun. This is usually a two-handed operation. The left hand lifts the shirt while the right hand goes for the weapon. A different way for someone to draw a weapon is to appear to be pulling out a wallet. Although it is less common among criminals, the shoulder harness draw also looks like someone reaching for his wallet. This is why, regardless of how irritated you may be about being stopped, you should always reach for your wallet slowly when dealing with a police officer. You'd be amazed at how much distance you can cover in the few seconds it takes for an attacker to draw a gun. You've already prepared for action by being at code 2, so you'll also have adrenaline and fear adding to your speed. The more distance you can cover, the less likely he is to shoot.
One thing I can't believe is the number of people who think that the criminal is some sort of super marksman who can hit a target, a running target away. It's real hard to hit a running target. As a matter of fact, a gun barrel held 5 degrees off the center target will miss a human-sized target at 15 feet. Your safety relies on getting away from the criminal. At point-blank range, he's going to hit you. But if you put the distance between you and him, you'll be safe.
Surviving a successful surprise attack is difficult because you must immediately go to code 3. Most people can't do that. Therefore, you must spot the criminal before he moves so that you can mentally prepare yourself to do what is necessary. The best way to protect yourself from a surprise attack is by doing a role-playing exercise. For a few days, pretend you are a mugger. Where would you hide? Check out the ATM, your parking spot, and your front door. Look at every place you go regularly from a mugger's point of view. Get a friend to help you find the real hiding places. Some places you think are good to hide may not be. The reverse is also true. Once you have identified the mugger zone, you can automatically go to code 2 should you see anyone in that area. Always avoid the cutoff gesture. That occurs when you indicate you no longer wish to speak to a person by turning your back on him. In a normal social context, this works well. In a criminal situation, you have not only passed the interview, but you've also handed him an attack position on a silver platter. Don't ever turn your back on an interviewer. It is he, not you, who ends the interview. The fourth stage of the criminal process is the attack itself. The intent may be rape, robbery, or plain assault. This is where the perpetrator finally commits himself to the attack. The final stage of the process is the reaction. Like intent, this stage, too, occurs totally inside the attacker's mind. This is how he reacts to what has occurred. In many cases, the criminal can now afford drugs. This becomes the positive reinforcement for his actions. As long as he gets the positive reinforcement, he will continue the actions that created it. In this case, crime. A more dangerous situation develops when the reaction occurs during the crime. This is a power trip that can escalate a simple burglary into a rape or homicide. 80% of all women who are injured by rapists are harmed after the rape has taken place. This debunks the myth that says, don't fight back, because then you might make him mad. Most robbers are only after money. If a robber gets the drop on you, it is the combination of his own psyche and your ability to remain calm that will prevent it from escalating into something worse. In this case of an outright assault, the only safe way out of it is through it. You must be able to go to code 3 immediately. At this point, the object is not to engage in a fist fight with your attacker. Instead, you must inflict enough harm on your opponent to prevent him from hurting you.
You know, a lot of people say that they don't want to learn how to defend themselves because they're afraid that they'll attract violence. Knowing how to defend yourself doesn't attract violence. Being aggressive attracts violence. Anger attracts anger. Knowing how to defend yourself and being willing to defend yourself is not aggressive, and that doesn't attract violence. People who don't differentiate between the two, they're confused. There is a big difference, and you need to learn it to be safe.
A game common to street people is called buzzing. Just as a fly may buzz around your face, some street people attempt to come close to you to see if they can do it. In many cases, this is just an attempt to unnerve you, or for the street person to count coup on someone with whom he has a problem. This game consists of the street person coming close into attack position, sometimes moving into your blind spot. He's trying to see if he can get close to you. Whenever a street person attempts to get close, you can let him know you have his number with just a look. Or you can shift so that you have him in sight. When confronted, they are either all smiles or they just veer away. This is a real interview and should not be ignored. It is often a technique used by the extremely young or cowardly. They need to build courage in order to attack. By ignoring it, you give them the go-ahead signal. Violent crimes happen mainly in fringe areas, that borderland between the crowd and a deserted area. In a crowd, there are too many people for the criminal to safely attack. Too far away, and there is no one to attack. Therefore, the criminal will lurk in the fringe areas. You are most likely to be attacked while walking either to or from your car. This is especially true in malls, markets, or shopping areas. These are places the criminal knows you are likely to have money. Robbery is the only violent crime that peaks in December. The criminal knows not only where you are, but when you are most likely to have money. Just as waterholes attract predators in the wild, ATMs attract muggers in urban areas. So do public transportation systems and their waiting areas. The fringes around public events and gatherings are also prime hunting areas for criminals. College campuses are often stalking grounds for rapists. The predator is drawn to these places because that is where his prey is. Anytime you enter a fringe area, keep your eyes open. Your safety can be ensured by a simple visual sweep. Check the likely hiding spots. Look for people with intent in the area, especially if they are looking at you. Look for any group of young males loitering around. If you see any of these warning signs, go to code 1.
I'm looking for 22nd Street.
In order to stop a criminal attack before it happens, you must be willing to commit the same amount of violence on him that he is willing to commit on you. This message is delivered by nonverbal communication and attitude. You must meet this unvoiced threat with an equally loud message that says it would be too costly for him to try. It's not a matter of being tougher, just tough enough that if he tries something, he knows you'll both get hurt. He needs to know that while you may not win, neither will he. This is too dangerous for a middle-line predator to risk. If he doesn't believe you, he'll attack. Sincerity comes from inside you, not macho bluster or bitchiness. He's willing to violate your rights and self-worth with violence, and you must stop him. The correct usage of this system will cause 80% of all trouble to pass you by. But there is still the 20% chance of a situation developing all the way. If this happens, remember that you are not there to fight him. Your goal is to neutralize any threat and get safely away. Sometimes, in order to escape, you have to go through your attacker. If you have to go through your attacker, you have to stop him first. Unfortunately, there is no way to stop an attacker without hurting him. Do what you need to do and get to safety. The myth of a man holding off attackers while his loved one runs to safety is complete nonsense. It is not going to happen. Most women won't run away under such circumstances because of loyalty. Few women will desert their loved ones to attackers without joining in the fight. Your woman is not going to run away until she knows for sure that you're going to be right there with her. Forget the macho. The couple that flees together stays together. Our society says that violence is something that nice people don't do. Very little violence occurs where the participants are saints. The law isn't always clear on when you should strike, nor do authorities agree on how hard you should strike. An extreme imbalance exists between what you must realistically do versus what you can legally do. If you are forced to use self-defense, be prepared to face both criminal and civil charges. In court, life is always given higher priority than property. In most states, you cannot use physical force to stop a property crime without committing a more serious offense. The use of lethal force is prohibited unless you are in immediate fear of your life or in danger of great bodily injury. The bottom line is that it will be up to the court to decide if your use of force was justified. If a case goes to court, you can rely on the criminal lying as to his intent. Furthermore, in the courtroom, a lawyer can make even the most obvious situation sound like you were overreacting. While legally it is stated in different words, from a practical standpoint, you can't make the first move. He has to attack you first. Unfortunately, if you wait that long, most times it's too late. Before you consider any form of self-defense item, understand that there are established legal parameters in which you are justified to use force. You should consult a local attorney before you even consider using a defensive weapon. There are also certain answers that can protect you after you've stopped an attacker. Knowing the right thing to say to the authorities can keep you from facing criminal charges and partially protect you against civil suit. Again, consult legal experts. Finding out this information before you need to use it is just one more form of insurance. Lawsuits are rampant in such cases. A wrong move on your part can put you at risk of losing everything you own in court to the very attacker you had to defend yourself against on the street. In this video, you have seen demonstrations of the signals that can warn you when a dangerous situation is developing. Once you are aware of them, these danger signs become obvious when you see them in the street. Remember the first three stages of a crime: intent, interview, and positioning. Watch out for their development. Your awareness enables you to take the necessary steps which prevent the criminal from advancing his plan. Your attitude and actions should convey to the criminal that it is not safe for him to attack you. To close any gaps in your self-protection network, the next step is a weekend-long combat course. The training you'll receive there will allow you to handle any remaining situations.
It's your right not to be the victim of a crime. But like any other right, it's your responsibility to make sure that nobody takes that away from you. Criminal, he's trying to take it away from you. And you can't rely on anybody else. You are your own first line of defense out here.